Kneel down. The command shatters the refined silence of the Meridian restaurant as Millionaire's wife Mary Carter towers over a black waitress, demanding she apologize for a staged wine spill on her $15,000 Dior gown. 150 guests watch with phones raised, expecting submission and viral entertainment. But Linda Baker delivers one word that changes everything: no. Mary has no idea she's just challenged the wrong person. The helpless waitress is actually Dr. Linda Baker, Harvard MBA graduate, class of 2022, working undercover to save her dying mother from $35,000 in medical debt. This refusal will trigger the downfall of a $200 million criminal empire built on racism, real estate fraud, and corruption. As Mary celebrates her victory and Linda walks out with head held high, the millionaire's wife doesn't realize she's already been caught confessing to financial crimes. The invisible waitress has spotted paperwork from Sterling and Associates, the city's most notorious accounting firm, sitting on Mary's table. Justice is coming, served cold and calculated, and Mary Carter's world of privilege is about to crumble without Linda saying another word. The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian cast dancing shadows across Linda Baker's face as she adjusted her server's apron for the 6th time that evening. Her hands trembled slightly as Marcus Thompson barked across the dining room. "Table 12 needs their wine refilled. Table 12! Linda's jaw tightened. Mary Carter's table. 3 years ago, Linda had been someone else entirely. Dr. Linda Baker, MBA, Harvard Business School, class of 2022. Her thesis on emerging market economics had earned a standing ovation and job offers from 3 Fortune 500 companies. Her mother Dorothy had sat in that audience, cancer-free and beaming, both of them believing the sacrifices had finally paid off. But cancer didn't respect Harvard degrees or 5-year plans. 18 months ago, it returned with a vengeance. The bills arrived like clockwork, $8,000 here, $15,000 there, now totaling over $35,000. Linda had burned through her savings in 4 months, maxed every credit card, and watched corporate job offers evaporate when she explained she couldn't relocate. The Meridian paid $400 a night in tips when she worked the VIP section. It wasn't enough, but it kept the collection agencies at bay and her mother's treatment on schedule. Everyone at the Meridian knew Mary Carter. She arrived every Thursday at 7 o'clock sharp, dressed in designer labels that cost more than most people's cars, surrounded by her rotating court of socialites. Her husband James had built a real estate empire that owned half the city's commercial properties, but Mary had built something more insidious, a reputation that could destroy careers with a whisper. Linda had watched it happen twice. Sophia, a Latina server who suggested Mrs. Carter's meal wasn't prepared incorrectly, fired within the hour. Marcus, a black busboy who accidentally brushed against Mary's Hermes bag, escorted out by security while Mary's friends filmed his humiliation for social media. The pattern was unmistakable. Mary Carter had turned cruelty into an art form, and she targeted people who looked like Linda. As Linda approached with the Chateau Margaux 2015 worth more than her monthly rent, she could hear Mary's voice carrying across the dining room. The problem with this city is that people have forgotten about standards, the natural order of things. Mary's eyes landed on Linda with predatory precision. Take this restaurant, for example. They hire anyone these days. No consideration for whether someone truly belongs in an establishment like this, whether they have the breeding or background to serve people of quality. Linda kept her expression neutral as she reached to refill Mary's glass. But something caught her eye. Tucked beneath Mary's Hermes purse was a manila folder, its edges revealing a letterhead she recognized. Sterling and Associates, one of the city's most notorious accounting firms. The folder was marked Confidential Q4 Offshore Transfers, and beside it lay a smartphone displaying what appeared to be encrypted banking notifications. Linda's Harvard training kicked in reflexively, her mind cataloging patterns in financial chaos. In that moment, she understood something that would change everything. Mary Carter's power wasn't just built on old money and social connections. It was built on secrets, the kind federal investigators would find very interesting. Then Mary's companion accidentally bumped Linda's arm. Red wine splashed across Mary's $15,000 Dior gown in a theatrical cascade of crimson. Mary's gasp was perfectly timed, her outrage meticulously choreographed. "Kneel down!" Mary's shriek cut through the elegant silence like thunder. 150 pairs of eyes snapped toward them. I said, "Kneel down and apologize for ruining my dress." The entire restaurant held its breath. Linda stood motionless, her fingers gripping the wine bottle. She thought of her mother fighting for every breath in a hospital bed. She thought of her Harvard diploma hidden in her apartment closet. She thought of every person Mary Carter had humiliated into silence. "No." Linda's voice cut like ice through the suffocating silence. Mary's face flushed crimson. "Excuse me? Did you just tell me no? Do you know who I am? My husband owns half this city." She whirled around, finding Marcus Thompson scurrying over like a well-trained lapdog. His eyes darted between them, calculating which side would benefit his career. The answer was obvious. "Mrs. Sterling, I am so terribly sorry," Thompson stammered, then turned to Linda with barely concealed disgust. "Baker, what have you done now?" The question carried loaded assumptions that she was guilty, that this wasn't her first offense, that someone like her was naturally prone to trouble. Linda had worked at the Meridian for 8 months without a single complaint, earning more in tips than servers with twice her experience. But none of that mattered against Mary Carter's word. "I won't apologize for something I didn't do," Linda repeated, her voice growing stronger. Her mother's hospital bills were crushing, but dignity was priceless. The medical debt climbed toward $35,000 while machines beeped out the rhythm of borrowed time. But even desperation had its limits. "If you fire me for telling the truth, then that's a price I'll pay." Mary's fury melted into cruel delight. Fire her? Oh no, firing is too good for someone like her. I want her to understand her place in this world. She began circling Linda, her voice projecting to every corner. "You people need to learn respect. You need to understand that there are consequences for stepping out of line." The coded language wasn't lost on anyone. Phones emerged from purses and pockets, capturing every moment. Linda could see herself tomorrow, viral video sensation, the uppity waitress who forgot her station. "My place," Linda said quietly, her voice cutting through the charged atmosphere, "is not on my knees." Mary's face contorted with fury. "Your place is wherever I say it is. I know the mayor, the police chief, the head of every major business in this city. One phone call from me and you'll never work in this town again." She snapped her manicured fingers, the sound sharp as a whip crack. Thompson seized the moment. "Rose, you're suspended immediately. Clean out your locker and leave the premises. Security will escort you out." 2 burly guards appeared as if summoned by magic. The other staff members averted their eyes, ashamed but unwilling to risk their own jobs. Solidarity was a luxury they couldn't afford. As the security guards approached, Linda's hand moved to her apron pocket, touching a folded paper with her mother's handwriting. "Dr. Linda Baker, MBA, Harvard Business School, class of 2022. Not just a reminder, but a weapon waiting for deployment. She looked directly into Mary Carter's cold blue eyes and saw something the millionaire's wife had missed completely. Not defeat, but calculation. Not submission, but strategy. "This isn't finished," Linda said quietly, her words carrying a promise that made Mary's triumphant smile falter for just a heartbeat. The guards flanked her as she walked toward the exit, spine straight despite the whispers trailing behind. The room full of witnesses believed they had just observed a destruction. They had no idea they'd actually watched the first move in a game Mary Carter didn't even realize she had entered. Linda walked out with her dignity intact. A mental photograph of that Sterling and Associates folder burned into her memory. Her future uncertain, but her resolve unshakable. If you're already hooked by this story of justice and courage, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens when Linda strikes back. And drop a comment below. Do you think Linda made the right choice refusing to kneel? What would you have done in her position? Rain drummed against the windows of Linda's modest apartment as she sat across from her mother at their small kitchen table. Dorothy Baker looked fragile in her faded pink robe, chemotherapy having stolen 30 pounds from her once robust frame, but her eyes still held the fire that had raised a daughter to never back down from bullies. "Tell me what happened, baby," Dorothy said, reaching across the table with fingers that felt like bird bones wrapped in tissue paper. As Linda recounted the evening's events, her mother's expression shifted from concern to pride to quiet fury. "That woman thinks she can break you because of the color of your skin and the uniform you wear," Dorothy said finally. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with, does she?" The smile that crossed her weathered face held secrets only a mother who had sacrificed everything for her child's education could possess. "You didn't get through Harvard by giving up when things got hard." Linda pulled out her laptop, the same one that had carried her through Harvard Business School. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who had once commanded spreadsheets and financial models instead of carrying plates. Mary Carter thinks she knows everything about everyone, but she's about to learn that assumptions can be dangerous. The screen glowed as search engines revealed their secrets. The first hour painted a picture of typical old money excess. Society pages showed Mary at charity galas and political fundraisers, photographed with the mayor, police commissioner, and judges. James Carter's real estate empire, Carter Properties Group, included commercial office buildings downtown, shopping centers in affluent suburbs, luxury apartment complexes, and historic renovation projects. Their charity involvement was extensive: Children's Hospital Foundation Board, Arts Council, homeless shelter fundraisers. Enough charity events to fund a small nation's healthcare system. But as Linda dug deeper, cracks began to appear in the pristine facade. Carter Properties Group had been flagged by city building inspectors 4 times in the past year for violations: unsafe working conditions, unpermitted construction, inadequate safety measures. Construction industry forums whispered about delayed payments to contractors. 3 civil suits had been quietly settled out of court in the past 18 months. "Interesting," Linda murmured, copying links and building a digital file. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable: a company bleeding money while maintaining the appearance of prosperity. Classic signs of financial distress, wrapped in designer clothing. Linda researched Sterling and Associates, the accounting firm from Mary's folder. Known for creative financial solutions, their client list included politicians under ethics investigations. 2 partners had been previously censured by the state accounting board. They specialized in offshore tax structures, shell companies, and complex corporate arrangements. Multiple clients had later been investigated by the IRS and SEC. "When you need an accountant who won't ask questions," Linda noted. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica Martinez, her former study partner from Harvard who now worked as a senior auditor. "Girl, I saw the video from tonight. Are you okay?" 3 flame emojis followed a link to social media where the confrontation was already viral. Linda's stomach clenched reading the comments, some supportive, others vicious, all missing the larger picture. Linda typed back, "I'm fine. Question for you. What do you know about Carter Properties Group and Sterling and Associates?" The response came within minutes. followed by a phone call. Jessica's voice was low and urgent. "Linda, honey, you need to be very careful. Carter Properties is under investigation by city regulators. I can't say more over the phone, but there are irregularities in their financial reports that would make our professors weep." She referenced offshore accounts, questionable tax deductions, phantom expenses, the kind of thing that gets federal attention if anyone connects the dots. These people don't play fair, if they think you're a threat. The next morning, Linda woke to a text from Marcus Thompson. "Your suspension has been upgraded to termination, effective immediately. This decision is final." Cowardly, hiding behind corporate policy, but as she deleted the message, another notification caught her attention. Carter Properties Group stock drops 15% in after-hours trading. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Someone was dumping shares, smart money running for the exits, before whatever scandal was brewing became public knowledge. Linda screenshot the article and added it to her growing file. That afternoon, Mary Carter swept into the Meridian like a conquering general returning to claim her trophy. She requested Linda's former section specifically, making a show of examining the wine list while regaling her lunch companions with embellished tales. "Some people simply don't understand their place in society," Mary proclaimed, loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. "But I taught that little waitress a lesson she won't soon forget." But Mary's victory tour was about to encounter an unexpected obstacle. A woman in a business suit sat 2 tables away, taking careful notes and recording every word on her phone. It was Linda returned, not as a server, but as a customer. She had used her emergency credit card for a meal she couldn't afford and clothes that transformed her from service worker to professional. The transformation was remarkable. The same woman dismissed as insignificant yesterday now commanded respect from the hostess and deference from the waitstaff. Appearance was everything in this world. As Mary's voice rose with increasingly grandiose claims, she revealed information that made Linda's pulse quicken. References to offshore accounts we've been restructuring. Mentions of temporary relocations of assets to more friendly jurisdictions. Knowing winks about flexible interpretations of tax. "Our accountants at Sterling have been absolute magicians with the quarterly reports," Mary announced with the confidence of someone who believed themselves untouchable. She was confessing to financial crimes in a room full of witnesses, recorded on a device that would preserve every incriminating word. The irony was beautiful in its simplicity. The same arrogance that had led her to humiliate a waitress was now providing the evidence needed to destroy her. Linda saved the recording, backed it up to cloud storage, and sent an encrypted copy to a secure email account. Her mind was already analyzing tax evasion, money laundering, obstruction, all federal crimes. Linda paid her bill with her nearly maxed credit card and left a generous tip for the nervous server. She walked out with evidence that could end an empire while Mary remained inside, basking in her victory, completely unaware. Linda's phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. "How did it go, baby?" Linda smiled as she stepped onto the street, phone in her pocket containing Mary's confession. Better than expected. Much better. The game had begun, and Mary Carter had no idea she was already losing. 3 days after her termination, Linda's apartment had transformed into a war room. Spreadsheets covered every surface as she conducted financial analysis of Carter Properties using public records. Her Harvard MBA training kicked in pattern recognition, revealing a shell company structure becoming visible. Carter Properties owned subsidiaries, which owned other companies. Circular ownership designed to obscure the true financial picture. Dorothy watched from the doorway. "You've got that look," she said. "What look, Mama?" End quote. "The look you had when you were defending your thesis. The look that says someone's about to learn a very expensive lesson." Linda's phone buzzed with a text from Carmen Santos, one of the few Meridian servers who had maintained contact. Carmen was a Latina woman, 32, a single mother of two, who had also been targeted by Mary in the past, but survived by staying invisible. "Linda, I have information you might want." The phone call revealed that Mary was hosting a private dinner party at the Meridian Friday evening in the exclusive private dining room. Only 15 guests, the city's most influential power brokers. The invitation described it as an investment opportunity discussion. Invitation only. "They need extra catering staff for the event," Carmen explained. "Management is desperate. 2 servers called out sick. I told them I knew someone reliable who could fill in. I didn't mention it was you." The risk was enormous. Linda could be recognized immediately, but the opportunity was too valuable to pass up. "Mary won't expect to see you there. You were fired, banned. Why would you come back? Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight." Linda visited an electronics store and purchased a micro-recording device for $300 she couldn't afford, charging it to her screaming credit card. She studied the operation manual like exam prep, testing audio quality, battery life, and storage capacity. The device was small enough to conceal in a server's uniform with high-quality audio capture up to 30 feet and 8 hours of recording time. Friday evening arrived. Linda donned a server's uniform, again different from her usual attire, the catering company's generic black and white. Hair pulled back differently, minimal makeup. Her goal was to blend into the background, become invisible, exactly what these people expected from service workers. Carmen met her at the service entrance. "You sure about this?" Linda's response was immediate. "I've never been more sure of anything." She adjusted her borrowed name tag that said Maria and checked the hidden recording device one final time. The Founders Room was the Meridian's most exclusive space, reserved for private events and invitation-only gatherings. Crystal chandeliers more elaborate than the main dining room hung above hand-painted ceiling murals depicting the city's history. The table was set for 15, with china costing $500 per place setting. Wine bottles worth thousands had been pre-selected. 15 of the city's most powerful individuals arrived. Linda recognized them from her research. Police Commissioner Robert Hayes, City Councilwoman Patricia Anderson, Real estate developer Thomas Whitmore, banking executive Gregory Chen, construction company owner Michael Torres, and others from Mary's social circle. James Carter sat at the head of the table, Mary's husband, whom Linda was seeing in person for the first time. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit, commanding presence. The real power behind the Carter Properties empire. Mary arrived last, making a grand entrance in a midnight blue Valentino gown that cost more than most people's annual salaries. A diamond necklace worth easily $200,000 caught the light. She greeted guests like a queen receiving courtiers and didn't even glance at the serving staff. Linda was invisible to her, just another faceless server. The champagne reception began, and Linda moved through the room like a ghost in black and white, her recording device capturing everything. Mary called the meeting to order over the appetizer course. "Thank you all for joining James and me this evening. We wanted to discuss some exciting opportunities. As you know, the current regulatory environment has become challenging." Knowing smiles circled the table. But challenges, as we all understand, are simply opportunities in disguise. Mary waxed poetic about offshore accounts. The beauty of international banking is that money becomes wonderfully fluid. Numbers can dance between accounts like ballet dancers, appearing here, disappearing there, always in motion. The men chuckled appreciatively, while their wives nodded with knowing smiles from years of looking the other way. James Carter took over, explaining the investment opportunity with enthusiasm. The key is layering, creating complexity that makes tracing impossible. Company A owns Company B, which has partnerships with Company C. By the time anyone tries to trace ownership, the paper trail leads to a post office box in the Cayman Islands. Laughter filled the room, a casual admission of conspiracy to commit tax evasion, hanging in the air like expensive perfume. Mary's voice cut through. Speaking of fluid arrangements, James and I have decided it's time to diversify our portfolio geographically. Some of our more liquid assets will be taking an extended vacation. Switzerland is lovely this time of year, at least until this unfortunate city investigation resolves itself. The words carried the casual confidence of a lifetime believing rules applied to other people. Guests nodded knowingly, several pulling out phones, presumably making similar arrangements. Linda's hands remained steady as she served the next course, but her mind raced. Mary Carter had just confessed to obstruction of justice and money laundering. The conversation shifted to business challenges. James described regulatory problems with frustration. These inspector types think they're so clever. But they don't understand construction is a relationship business. Sometimes you need to encourage certain relationships to flourish. The meaning was clear to everyone. Police Commissioner Hayes nodded. Relationship building is essential. City Councilwoman Anderson added, I've always believed in cooperative partnerships. Systematic bribery was as common as charity galas. Mary laughed and raised her wine glass in a mock toast. To creative problem-solving and flexible interpretations of bureaucratic guidelines. The glasses clinked together in a symphony of complicity that would have federal investigators working overtime within the week. Then came the charity fraud confession. Patricia Anderson mentioned the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. Mary beamed. We raised $2 million for the children's wing. Or rather, we reported raising $2 million. Knowing winks circled the table. James explained, the beauty of charitable organizations' minimal oversight, maximum flexibility. Money flows in. Some flows to actual charity. The rest finds its way to more productive uses. They were stealing from sick children's hospitals. Linda's grip tightened on the water pitcher. Then disaster struck. As Linda leaned over to refill Mary's wine glass, Mary glanced up. Recognition flickered across her face like lightning. Wait a minute. Mary's voice cut through the dinner party chatter like a blade. I know you. You're that waitress from the other night. The one who was so rude to me. The one I had fired. The room fell silent. All attention focused on Linda, trapped in the spotlight of a dozen pairs of curious eyes. James Carter's face drained of color as he realized the implications. A former employee with obvious grievances had been listening to their private business discussions. Paranoia, natural to people with secrets, began spreading like wildfire. How much did you hear? James demanded, standing abruptly. Mary's voice rose to a shriek. What do you know? What are you planning to do with whatever information you gathered? Police Commissioner Hayes added, this could be industrial espionage. They were already building their defense. Linda backed toward the service entrance as two security guards materialized from the shadows, faces grim. I was just helping Carmen with the catering, she said calmly, her voice carrying clearly. Though I have to say this has been quite an educational evening. I've learned so much about creative accounting and international business practices. The subtle threat wasn't lost on anyone. Mary's composure cracked visibly, fury tightening her jaw, while fear widened her eyes. For the first time in her privileged life, Mary Carter was genuinely afraid. Get her out of here immediately, she commanded, her voice carrying a note of panic. And I want her arrested for trespassing, industrial espionage, whatever we can charge her with. But Linda was already at the service door, her hand on the handle, freedom seconds away. She turned back for one final look at the room full of criminals in designer clothes, memorizing faces and voices that would soon be explaining themselves to federal investigators. "Thank you for a lovely evening," Linda said with perfect politeness, her words carrying the weight of promise and threat combined. "I look forward to seeing you all again very soon." The service door closed behind her. She could hear Mary screaming at the security team, demanding they find her and retrieve whatever recording equipment she'd used. But it was too late. The evidence was already beyond their reach, stored in multiple secure locations with copies prepared for the appropriate authorities. In her car, hands shaking with adrenaline, Linda pulled the recording device from her uniform and played back several minutes. The audio quality was perfect. Every incriminating word, crystal clear. Mary's laughter, James's explanations, the toast to corruption. She texted Carmen, "Thank you. I owe you." Carmen's response came immediately. "Get them. Get all of them." Linda drove into the night, evidence secure. Mary Carter had underestimated her opponent once again, and this time the mistake would cost everything. Information gathered, confessions recorded. Justice was no longer a distant hope. It was inevitable. At 3 a.m, Linda sat at her laptop, unable to sleep, researching attorneys who took on powerful clients. Most lawyers in the city were connected to the Carter network. She needed someone outside their influence, someone with reason to fight them. One name kept appearing in her search for attorneys white-collar crime civil rights. Robert Craig, Esquire. His profile showed a black man in his mid-40s, with graying temples and intense eyes. Harvard Law School graduate, 1 year ahead of Linda at Harvard. Former federal prosecutor who had worked for the DOJ Financial Crimes Division with a track record of taking down corrupt politicians and white-collar criminals. He'd left the DOJ 3 years ago to start his own practice, specializing in whistleblower cases, civil rights violations, and financial fraud. He'd won a $50 million settlement against a real estate company for discrimination and successfully prosecuted 2 city councilmen for bribery. He was known for not backing down, regardless of his opponent's power. Then Linda found an article from 8 months ago. Prominent attorney confronts discrimination at charity auction. Robert Craig had attended the mayor's annual fundraiser at the city convention center. Mary Carter had publicly questioned whether he could afford to be there and suggested he might be more comfortable at a different type of event, coded racist language in front of 400 attendees. Craig had filed a formal complaint. Mary's response was to laugh it off and call him oversensitive. The article quoted Craig, "This kind of casual racism is systemic. It needs to be confronted, especially among the wealthy who believe they're untouchable." Robert Craig had personal reason to want Mary Carter taken down. Monday morning, Linda called his office. The receptionist informed her that Mr. Craig's schedule was quite full. "Tell him I have evidence of a $200 million fraud scheme involving the people who humiliated him at the mayor's auction." After 30 seconds on hold, "Mr. Craig can see you at 2 p.m. today." His law office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, with windows offering a commanding view of the city that had tried to break them both. The space featured modern furnishings, walls of law books, filing cabinets, and the organized chaos of an active practice. Photos displayed civil rights leaders and historic moments. Craig's diplomas hung prominently: Howard University for undergrad, Harvard Law School. Awards included DOJ, Distinguished Service, and State Bar Excellence in pro bono work. Robert Craig was exactly as his photo suggested: commanding presence, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, expensive but not flashy suit, a man who had earned his success. His handshake was firm and professional. "Miss Baker, please sit. I understand you have information about Mary Carter." Linda placed a flash drive on his mahogany desk like a chess piece. "Mr. Craig, What I have here could change everything. But first I need to know, are you willing to go to war with the most powerful family in this city? Craig leaned back, studying her. Miss Baker, I've been fighting systems designed to crush people like us my entire career. The question isn't whether I'm willing. The question is whether you understand what you're starting. He outlined the dangers ahead, walking to the window and gazing down at the city. 3 years ago, Mary Carter ended the career of a young black prosecutor who was getting too close to James Carter's business dealings. She had him investigated for ethics violations, leaked false stories to the press, made sure he never worked in law again. He's now working as a paralegal in another state. Couldn't even practice law anymore. Then why are you willing to help me? Linda asked. Craig turned back, something in his eyes, like old pain mixed with newer rage, because Mary Carter made a mistake at that mayor's charity auction. She stood up in front of 400 people and suggested that lawyers like me weren't qualified to participate in high society events, implied I didn't belong because of the color of my skin. While her husband profits from overcharging the city for public projects, while she steals from children's charities. The memory clearly burned. I've been waiting for someone to bring me the ammunition I need. Craig played the recordings from the flash drive. His expression shifted from professional interest to barely contained excitement as James Carter's voice filled the office, casually describing money laundering techniques. Mary's laughter echoed as she toasted creative interpretation of tax law, police commissioner discussing relationship building, Councilwoman Anderson on cooperative partnerships. Craig paused the recording, making rapid notes. "This is incredible," he whispered. "We have conspiracy to commit tax evasion, obstruction of justice, money laundering, systematic bribery of city officials, charity fraud. Any one of these charges could break them. But taken together, this is a federal prosecutor's dream case." He began outlining their battle plan with the precision of a military campaign. "We'll need to coordinate with federal authorities, FBI's Financial Crimes Division, IRS Criminal Investigation Division, State Attorney General's Office, but we have to be careful about timing." He pulled up financial databases, cross-referencing shell companies and banking records with information from Linda's recordings. Craig opened a filing cabinet and revealed folders. "I've been building a network over the years, people whose careers or businesses were demolished by Carter influence." He spread files across the desk. Ricardo Mendoza, construction contractor never paid for city project work. Sandra Williams, former city inspector fired after refusing to ignore violations. Thomas Park, accountant threatened when he questioned irregularities. Angela Brown, journalist sued for libel when she investigated Carter properties. With your evidence, we can finally give them the justice they've been denied. An urgent knock interrupted them. Craig's secretary entered with a concerned expression. "Mr. Craig, there are 2 men in the lobby claiming to be private investigators. They're asking questions about whether Miss Baker has been in contact with you, mentioning industrial espionage and corporate theft." Mary Carter's retaliation had already begun, faster than either had anticipated. Craig moved quickly to protect the recordings, making multiple copies of the flash drive. "We need to file with federal authorities immediately before the Carters can claim the recordings were obtained illegally. I'll reach out to my contacts at FBI Financial Crimes Division. They've been looking for a way to crack the Carter organization for years." He handed Linda a secure phone and a business card for a protection service. "From this moment forward, assume you're being watched. Don't go home tonight. They know where you live. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't trust anyone except me and the federal agents I'm going to introduce you to." As Linda prepared to leave through the building's service entrance, Craig delivered information that changed everything. "There's something else you should know about Mary Carter's pattern of eliminating black professionals in this city." He showed her a folder containing documentation of 23 cases over the past Decades successful black professionals systematically targeted, all losing jobs, reputations, careers. It's not random, and it's not just about protecting James's business. Mary is part of a coordinated effort to maintain what she calls appropriate demographic balance in positions of influence. Craig's voice was intense. You're not just fighting for your own justice, Linda. You're fighting for every person whose life she's deliberately ruined because of the color of their skin. Linda felt the weight of responsibility, but also felt a fire igniting. This was bigger than personal vendetta. This was about systemic justice. Then Linda's phone buzzed. Hospital identification on the screen. Dorothy's oncologist, doctor. Miss Baker, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Your mother has taken a turn for the worse. Linda stood in the building stairwell, phone pressed to her ear as Dr. Martinez explained. Secondary infection, immune system compromised. We need to perform emergency surgery. Without it, the infection will become septic. The surgery will cost $50,000 and needs to happen within the next 48 hours. $50,000 Linda didn't have and couldn't possibly obtain through legitimate means. Craig's voice came through the secure phone. Linda, are you there? Linda's whispered response carried the weight of impossible choices. My mother is dying, and I don't know if I can wait for justice. Craig said he'd meet her at the hospital, but as Linda descended the stairs, she knew the truth. Justice takes time her mother doesn't have. She emerged into the afternoon sun, private investigators following with cameras, her mother fighting for life, and the realization that sometimes the right choice costs everything. This story is getting intense, and we're only halfway through. If you're invested in seeing Linda get justice, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the explosive ending. And tell me in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? What do you think Linda should do about her mother's surgery? The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant and desperation, a familiar combination that had haunted Linda's nights for months. She stood outside her mother's room, clutching the doctor's estimate $50,000 that might as well have been $50 million. Dorothy Baker lay connected to machines, beeping out the rhythm of a life hanging in balance. Her once strong hands now fragile as autumn leaves against stark white sheets. Dr. Martinez delivered the prognosis in the careful tone reserved for impossible news. The infection is aggressive, Miss Baker. Without immediate intervention, her immune system won't be able to fight it off. The surgery is her only chance. But I have to be honest about the financial reality. Insurance covers only 60% due to the experimental nature of the procedures. The remaining balance is due up front. I'm so sorry. Linda's mental calculations spun uselessly. Emergency credit card. $8,000 limit. Already $7,200 used. Savings. $127. Checking. $443. Total available. $1,370. Amount needed. $50,000. The gap might as well have been the moon. Robert Craig appeared in the corridor. Linda, I heard what happened. I can loan you the money. But Linda's pride rebelled, and she knew accepting would compromise the case. Defense attorneys would claim she'd been bought. I appreciate it, but I can't. Her phone rang. Unknown number. A woman's voice. Smooth and professional and dangerous. Miss Baker, my name is Patricia Thornton. I represent the Carter family. We understand your mother is facing a medical crisis. How terrible. How expensive. The implication was clear as day. The Carters are prepared to make you an offer. $100,000 immediately deposited to your mother's hospital account. Enough to cover surgery and post-operative care. Plus ongoing payments, $5,000 monthly for as long as your mother needs treatment. Linda's heart pounded as Patricia continued. All we ask in return is that you recant your testimony, admit the recordings were fabricated, and sign a legally binding statement acknowledging you attempted to extort the Carters. The veiled threat came next. Think about what really matters, Miss Baker. Your mother's life is worth more than some abstract concept of justice. Without this surgery, she has days. With our help, she could have years. What kind of daughter would choose pride over her mother's life? Of course, if you refuse our generous offer, we can't guarantee the hospital will continue providing care. The Carters are major donors to this facility. One phone call could make treatment complicated. Hanging up, Linda slid down the hospital wall and sat on the cold linoleum floor. Everything she'd fought for versus everything she loved. Dorothy had taught her that dignity couldn't be bought or sold, but dignity didn't keep someone alive. Justice was important, but was it more important than her mother's heartbeat? 23 other victims whose lives were destroyed were counting on her, but they weren't connected to machines in room 347. Linda entered her mother's room. Dorothy was awake, frail but eyes still sharp. "What is it, baby?" Linda explained the offer through tears. Dorothy's response was immediate, her voice weak but firm. "You will not take their blood money. I didn't raise you to sell your soul," Linda protested. "But Mama, you're dying." Dorothy's response was resolute. "We're all dying, baby. The question is how we live. I would rather die knowing my daughter stood up for what's right than live knowing she sold out to those people." 3 days later, Marcus Thompson called with false sympathy dripping from his voice. "Linda, I've been thinking about you. Perhaps we were too hasty with your termination, Mrs. Carter specifically requested that you be given a second chance. She believes in redemption and forgiveness. The lie was transparent. We'd like to offer your old job back. Reduced hours, of course, 20 per week instead of 40, and a temporary reduction in base pay during probationary period. But it's income, and I know you need that right now." The truth was simpler and more sinister. Mary wanted her enemy close, where she could be watched and controlled. Linda understood this, but she also understood she needed money desperately. The surgery was scheduled for 1 week. Even reduced hours meant $1,600 a month. Not nearly enough, but it was something. Linda accepted the job, hating herself for it, but her mother's life depended on income, no matter how meager. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford, measured against the steady beep of life support machines. 2 days after Linda's return, the Meridian's main dining room transformed into a showcase of excess that would have made Roman emperors blush. 50 of the city's most influential citizens gathered for Mary's birthday celebration. Designer gowns and tailored suits created a human tapestry of privilege. Mary held court at the center in a $35,000 custom Versace gown and $400,000 emerald necklace. Tonight is about celebrating not just another year of life, her voice carried to every corner, but another year of knowing exactly where we all belong in the natural order of things. Linda moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, serving champagne to people who looked through her as furniture. Mary's voice deliberately carried. "Some people in this city have forgotten their place recently. They've developed ideas above their station, thinking they can challenge those who were born to lead." Her eyes found Linda with predatory precision. The humiliation escalated as the evening progressed, each calculated insult designed to break what remained of Linda's dignity. Mary demanded Linda personally serve every course at the head table, ensuring maximum visibility for her subjugation. During the main course, Mary called for attention. "My dear friends, I want you all to meet someone special. This is Linda, a perfect example of how second chances can teach valuable lessons about knowing one's place." The introduction was delivered with patronizing tone reserved for describing trained animals. "Tell everyone what you've learned, Linda. Share your newfound wisdom about respect and appropriate behavior. Linda stood frozen in the spotlight of 50 pairs of expectant eyes, the weight of judgment pressing down like physical force. Her mother's face flashed through her mind, Dorothy fighting for every breath, while her daughter stood here being paraded like a trophy of submission. Hospital bills mounting. Surgery couldn't wait much longer. This job her only lifeline. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to reveal who she really was and what she knew about the criminal enterprise masquerading as high society. But the steady beep of life support machines echoed in her memory, drowning out rebellion with the sound of medical necessity. "I've learned," Linda began, her voice barely above a whisper, "that everyone has their place in this world." The crowd leaned forward, sensing victory, eager to witness complete capitulation. Mary's smile widened, savoring the moment like fine wine, phones recording for posterity. But as Linda continued speaking, something in her voice began to change, growing stronger despite tears threatening to spill. "I've learned that some people believe they can buy respect, that money can purchase the right to humiliate others without consequence." The crowd's smiles began to fade. "I've learned that there are people in this room." Her hand moved unconsciously to her pocket, where her mother's note rested like a talisman, who think their wealth makes them untouchable, that their crimes will never see the light of day because they can buy silence and intimidate witnesses. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as implications began sinking in. Mary's triumphant expression faltered as she realized her moment of victory was transforming into something else entirely. "That's enough," Mary snapped, her voice cutting through the sudden tension like a whip crack. "You're here to serve, not to lecture your betters about morality." But Linda was no longer listening to commands from someone whose power was built on a foundation of lies and stolen money. The breaking point had been reached. Something fundamental had shifted in the balance of power between them. "You're right, Mrs. Carter," Linda said, her voice now carrying clearly to every corner of the room. "I am here to serve." She paused, pregnant with meaning, "but not in the way you think." She pulled out her phone, fingers dancing across the screen with practiced efficiency. "I'm here to serve justice, and it's about to be delivered hot and fresh." The room erupted into confused murmurs as guests realized the evening's entertainment had taken an unexpected turn. Mary's face cycled through a spectrum of emotions, confusion, anger, and finally cold fear, as she suddenly understood they'd underestimated their opponent. "Security!" Mary screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the sound of Linda's phone connecting to the restaurant's sound system. Robert Craig's voice filled the stunned dining room with the authority of federal law, each word cutting through the champagne-soaked atmosphere like a surgeon's scalpel. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Attorney Robert Craig, representing the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division. We have credible evidence of money laundering and conspiracy to defraud the United States government involving several individuals present at this gathering." The recording continued as guests frantically reached for phones, some calling lawyers, others desperately calculating their own exposure. Linda's phone now broadcasts the recordings, James Carter's voice filling the room, explaining how the key is layering. The paper trail leads to Cayman Islands. Mary's laughter about liquid assets. Taking extended vacation in Switzerland. The police commissioner on relationship building. Their own voices condemned them in front of 50 witnesses, being recorded again on dozens of phones. Marcus Thompson backed away from Linda as if she were radioactive. Mary's voice rose to a shriek. "Stop this! Someone stop this!" But no one could stop the truth once it was unleashed. Linda stood calm in the eye of the storm, phone in hand, still broadcasting evidence. Robert Craig's voice concluded, "Federal agents are en route to this location. We advise everyone to remain calm and cooperative. Linda met Mary's eyes across the room, no longer a waitress looking at society queens, but equal looking at criminals. Mary's world was crumbling in real time. Linda's quiet words were audible in the sudden silence. "The party is over, Mrs. Carter, and the real show is about to begin." Sirens became audible in the distance, growing closer, justice finally arriving, and Mary Carter realizing too late that she had destroyed the wrong woman. 2 weeks after the birthday party exposure, the Metropolitan Hotel ballroom glittered with the calculated opulence of Mary Carter's annual charity gala benefiting the Children's Hospital Foundation. 200 of the city's most influential citizens had gathered, the event proceeding despite the brewing scandal. Mary had decided to show strength, to prove herself untouchable. She stood resplendent in a custom Saint Laurent gown of liquid silver, accepting praise and donations with practiced grace. "Tonight we celebrate the power of giving." Her voice carried the authority of someone who had never been denied anything. "We celebrate the responsibility that comes with success and the obligation to lift up those less fortunate than ourselves." The hypocrisy was breathtaking in its audacity, a thief preaching generosity while positioning herself as champion of the disadvantaged. Local television crews captured every moment, broadcasting live to viewers who had no idea they were watching a master criminal in her final hours of freedom. The moment of reckoning arrived, disguised as just another guest. Linda Baker entered the ballroom not through the service entrance she'd used for months, but through the main doors, walking with the confidence of someone who belonged in this world of power and privilege. Gone was the black server's uniform that had rendered her invisible. In its place, she wore a tailored Navy business suit that transformed her from servant to equal. Her posture radiating the authority that came from years of MBA training and months of meticulous preparation. The transformation was so complete that several guests who had looked through her countless times now found themselves drawn to her presence, sensing something different about the woman moving through their ranks with such quiet purpose. Mary's triumphant smile faltered when she spotted Linda approaching the stage, recognition flickering like lightning before a storm. What is she doing here? Someone call security. But Linda was already moving with purpose. Guests parting before her, creating a path to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda's voice cut through the ballroom chatter with the clarity of someone trained to command boardrooms. "I'm Dr. Linda Baker, and I have something important to share with you tonight." The crowd turned as one, drawn by the unexpected interruption of their carefully choreographed evening. Mary moved toward the microphone, clearly intending to regain control, but Linda was already speaking with the authority that came from possessing information that could change lives. "Many of you know me as the waitress who served your tables, the invisible woman who brought your drinks and cleaned up your messes. But what you don't know is that I hold an MBA from Harvard Business School." Gasps rippled through the room as guests began to realize their evening of self-congratulation was about to become something else entirely. "Security!" Mary shrieked. But her voice was drowned out by the sound of Linda connecting her phone to the ballroom sound system. The recorded voice of James Carter filled the space, casually discussing money laundering techniques with the enthusiasm of a craftsman describing his art. "The key is layering. Way, lekamine, loganmine," his voice echoed off the gilded walls. "And by the time anyone tries to trace ownership, the paper trail leads to a post office box in the Cayman Islands." The recordings continued, painting a picture of systematic criminal behavior spanning decades. These were their friends, business partners, fellow pillars of the community, casually discussing crimes that would have sent ordinary citizens to prison for life. Mary's voice joined the symphony of incrimination, laughing as she toasted creative interpretations of tax law while guests nodded along like conspirators. Linda stood at the podium like a prosecutor, delivering a closing argument, her voice calm and professional as she methodically dismantled the facade of respectability that had protected the Carter family for decades. Over $200 million have been stolen from charities intended to help sick children, homeless families, and disaster victims. Her words carried clearly to every corner and to the television cameras broadcasting live across the city. Financial charts displayed on the ballroom's projection screens, transaction records, shell company structures, offshore account transfers, false charity reports, documented bribery payments. Each document was another nail in the coffin of Mary's carefully constructed public image. Then the doors burst open. FBI agents flooded in, their badges gleaming under the crystal light like medals of justice finally arriving to collect its due. Agent Sarah Chen led the parade of federal law enforcement, her voice cutting through the chaos with practiced authority. Mary Carter, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and fraud against charitable organizations. The cold snap of steel replaced the soft clink of jewelry, the sound of justice claiming its due. Handcuffs closed around wrists, more accustomed to diamond bracelets. Mary's perfectly applied makeup began to run as tears streaked down her cheeks, while cameras captured every moment of the Millionaire's fall from grace. As federal agents led her away, her composure finally shattered completely. The woman who had commanded respect through fear and intimidation was reduced to sobbing pleas for mercy that fell on deaf ears. "You don't understand," she cried, looking back at Linda, with desperation bordering on madness. "I gave you a chance to know your place. I offered you money." Her voice rose to a shriek echoing off the ballroom walls like the cry of a wounded animal. "This isn't fair! We're important people!" But Linda stood unmoved, her expression calm, as she watched justice finally catch up with someone who had believed herself untouchable for far too long. Tears streaked Mary's face, the same humiliation she'd once forced on others now returned with interest. The audience froze in disbelief as expensive heels clicked against marble floors and guests began filing out, many already calculating their own exposure to the federal investigation that would surely follow. A secondary team of agents arrested James Carter. "James Carter, you're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, bribery, and tax evasion." Husband and wife were both in handcuffs, their empire built on lies crumbling in a single evening. The real estate magnate who had owned half the city now owned nothing but an orange jumpsuit. One by one, Mary's inner circle fell. Police Commissioner Robert Hayes, City Councilwoman Patricia Anderson, banker Gregory Chen, developer Thomas Whitmore. Like dominoes carefully arranged, Linda's evidence triggered a cascade of justice. 6 months after the Metropolitan Hotel Gala shocked the city to its core, the federal courthouse buzzed with reporters, spectators, and victims seeking closure, all eager to witness the final act of the Carter drama. Judge Margaret Thompson, an African-American woman with 25 years on the bench and a reputation for fairness and severity in white-collar cases, delivered sentences that would reshape how financial crimes were prosecuted in America. "Mary Carter, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison without possibility of parole." Her voice carried the weight of justice, long delayed. "James Carter, you are sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for your role as architect of this criminal enterprise." The forfeiture hearing was equally devastating. Federal prosecutors had traced every stolen dollar through the labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell companies, recovering $200 million in cash, property, and investments to be distributed to the charities and victims who had suffered under their regime of greed. The Carter Mansion, collection of luxury vehicles, vacation home, yacht, ironically named Untouchable, art collection, and jewelry, everything built on crime was confiscated. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The very wealth they had used to corrupt officials and silence victims was now funding the justice system that had brought them down. Linda Baker stood on the courthouse steps, no longer the invisible waitress who had been dismissed and humiliated, but the whistleblower whose courage had exposed decades of systemic corruption. The settlement check in her briefcase represented $2 million in compensation for lost wages and emotional distress. But more importantly, it represented validation that her fight had been worth the cost. She addressed the media calmly. This was never about revenge. It was about justice for me, for my mother, and for the 23 other Black professionals whose lives Mary Carter deliberately destroyed because she couldn't stand to see us succeed. Today proves that the law applies to everyone, regardless of wealth or connections. Dorothy Baker's medical bills were now a memory, her cancer treatment complete and successful thanks to the financial security Linda had fought so hard to achieve. Dorothy was cancer-free for 6 months, growing stronger every day. Rose Financial Consulting occupied a gleaming office in the heart of downtown, its mission statement etched in gold letters on the lobby wall. Empowering communities through financial justice. The firm specialized in helping minority-owned businesses navigate the complex world of corporate finance while providing pro bono services to families struggling with medical debt and predatory lending practices. The waiting room was always full of entrepreneurs seeking guidance and community leaders planning economic development projects that would benefit entire neighborhoods. The Meridian underwent its own dramatic transformation in the wake of the Carter scandal. Marcus Thompson's termination had been swift and permanent, his years of enabling discrimination finally catching up when federal investigators discovered his role in maintaining the restaurant's culture of prejudice. New management offered Linda a position as financial consultant, tasked with ensuring that employee compensation and advancement opportunities were based on merit rather than social connections. The servers who had once feared to speak out against injustice now worked in an environment where their voices were heard and their contributions valued. Dorothy spent her days volunteering at the community center, teaching literacy classes to adults who had been denied educational opportunities in their youth. My daughter showed this city that intelligence and determination matter more than birthright and bank accounts. Dorothy would tell anyone who would listen. She proved that justice isn't just a word in law books. It's something worth fighting for, no matter the cost. On a quiet Tuesday evening, 6 months after the sentencing, Linda returned to the Meridian, not as an employee or consultant, but as a customer, celebrating her mother's clean bill of health. She wore the same navy business suit from the night she had exposed the Carter conspiracy at the charity gala. In her purse, she carried her mother's note on folded paper, Dr. Linda Baker, MBA, Harvard Business School, class of 2022, no longer a hidden reminder of her worth, but a trophy of a battle won against impossible odds. The server who brought their wine was a young Black woman named Taylor, with confident posture and professional demeanor that spoke of the opportunities created by the changes Linda's courage had unleashed. Taylor had recently been accepted to business school and was working at the Meridian to pay tuition. Linda offered advice and encouragement, seeing herself in Taylor's determination. Mother and daughter raised their glasses in a toast to survival and justice. To my daughter, who refused to kneel. To you, Mama, who taught me to stand. The crystal glasses clinked together, a sound sweeter than any victory. Linda reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The woman who had once feared for her mother's life now sat in the same dining room where Mary Carter had tried to break her spirit. But Mary was gone, her influence vanquished, a prison cell replacing her corner booth. As they prepared to leave, Linda paused at the entrance, the same spot where security had escorted her out months ago. Now she walked out on her own terms, head high, victory complete, Dorothy on her arm. Both survivors, both fighters, both free. Outside, city lights reflected off the Meridian's windows. Linda's phone buzzed with a text from Robert Craig. Another whistleblower just contacted me. Referenced your case as inspiration. Ready to take down another corrupt empire? Linda smiled and typed her response. Send me the details. Justice doesn't sleep. The camera pulled back, showing Linda and Dorothy walking down the street. Behind them, the Meridian stood transformed. Above them, the city skyline was no longer controlled by the Carters. Ahead of them stretched a future bright with possibility. In the silence that followed, truth stood taller than wealth, and justice finally had a face. Before we wrap up, if this story of courage and justice inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more incredible true stories like this one. And I want to hear from you. Rate this story on a scale of 1 to 10 inches, the comments below, and tell me what moment impacted you the most. Did Linda's refusal to kneel give you chills? Did the final arrest scene satisfy your need for justice? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment. Mary Carter is currently serving her sentence at FCI Coleman, a federal correctional institution in Florida, eligible for release in 2039 at age 73. James Carter is serving his sentence at FCI Terre Haute in Indiana, eligible for release in 2044 at age 78. Rose Financial Consulting has helped over 300 minority-owned businesses secure $50 million in capital and provided pro bono services to 150 families struggling with medical debt. Linda Baker was named one of Forbes 30 Under 30 in finance and featured on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine. Dorothy Baker remains cancer-free and volunteers 20 hours per week teaching literacy classes at the community center that now bears her name. The Meridian restaurant implemented comprehensive equity training and maintains a 98% employee satisfaction rating, the highest in the city's hospitality industry. 23 Black professionals who were targeted by Mary Carter have filed a class action civil suit, with Linda Baker serving as lead plaintiff. The case is ongoing.